हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम टू स्मार्ट क्लास बाय नेहा यूट्यूब चैनल। आज का क्वेश्चन है, राइट द समरी ऑफ द पोएम माय लास्ट डचेस बाय रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग। लेट्स स्टार्ट। This poem is loosely based on historical events involving Alfonso, the Duke of Ferrar, who lived in the 16th century. The Duke is the speaker of the poem and tell us he is entertaining an emissary who has come to negotiate the Duke's marriage. He has recently been widowed to the daughter of another powerful family. As he shows the visitor through his palace, he stops before a portrait of the late Duchess, apparently a young and lovely girl. The Duke begins reminiscing about the portrait session, then about the Duchess herself. His musing give way to a diatribe on her disgraceful behavior. He claims she flirted with everyone and did not appreciate his gift of a 900 years old name. As his monologue continues, the reader realizes with ever more chilling certainty that the Duke in fact caused the Duchess's early demise. When her behavior escalated, he gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. Having made this disclosure, the Duke returns to the business at hand, arranging for another marriage with another young girl. As the Duke and emissary walk leave, the painting behind the Duke points out other notable artworks in his collection. My last touches comprises rhyming pentameter lines. The lines do not employ end stops, rather, they use enjambment, is sentences and other grammatical units do not necessarily conclude at the end of lines. Consequently, the rims do not create a sense of closure when they come, but rather remain a subtle driving force behind the Duke's compulsive revelations. The Duke is quite a performer. He mimics others' voices, creates hypothetical situations, and uses the force of his personality to make horrifying information seem merely colorful. Indeed, the poem provides a classic example of a dramatic monologue. The speaker is clearly distinct from the poet. An audience is suggested but never appears in the poem, and the revelation of the Duke's character is the poem's primary aim. But Browning has more in mind than simply creating a colorful character and placing him in a picturesque historical scene. Rather, the specific historical setting of the poem harbors much significance. The Italian Renaissance held a particular fascination for Browning and his contemporaries, for it represented the flowering of the aesthetic and the human alongside, or in some cases in the place of the religious and the moral. Thus, the temporal setting allows Browning to again explore sex, violence, and aesthetics as all entangled, complicating, and confusing each other. The lustness of the language belies, belies the fact that the Duchess was punished for her natural sexuality. The Duke's ravings suggest that most of the supposed transgressions took place only in his mind. Like some of Browning's fellow Victorians, the Duke sees sin lurking in every corner. The reason the speaker here gives for killing the Duchess ostensibly differ from that given by the speaker of Porphyria's nevertheless. Porphyria, Porphyria's lover. For murder, Porphyria, however, both women are nevertheless victims of a male desire to inscribe and fix female sexuality. The desperate need to do this mirrors the effort of Victorian society to mold the behavior, sexual and otherwise, of individual. For people confronted with an increasingly complex and anonymous modern world, this impulse comes naturally. Control would seem to be to conserve and stabilize. The Renaissance was a time when morally dissolute men like the Duke exercised absolute power, and as such, it is a fascinating study for the Victorians. Words like this imply that surely a time that produced magnificent art like the Duchess portrait could not have been entirely evil in its allocation of societal control, given though it put men like the Duke in power. A poem like My Last Duchess calculatedly engages its readers on a psychological level because we hear only the Duke's musings. We must piece the story together ourselves. Browning forces his reader to become involved in the poem in order to understand it, and this aids to the fun of reading his work. It also forces the reader to question his or her own response to the subject portrayed and the method of its portrayal. We are forced to consider which aspect of the poem dominates, the horror of the Duchess' fate or the beauty of the language and the powerful dramatic development. Friends, this is the summary of My Last Touches. I hope it helps you. वीडियो पसंद आया हो तो लाइक शेयर जरूर करें एंड सब्सक्राइब द चैनल। मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वीडियो पर। थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग।